Good morning, and welcome to All Things Marcellus with me, Attorney Doug Clark of the Clark Law Firm. I am located at 1563 Main Street in Peckville, and I'm here every Sunday from 8 to 9 a.m. to provide landowners valuable information you need regarding natural gas development here in Pennsylvania. And of course, this is a show for landowners, and I represent landowners and only landowners in my practice, no pipeline or gas companies or any other companies. And just a little background, I represent landowners currently for gas leasing, pipeline agreements. I think it's probably safe to say, but I'm going to go ahead and just still be conservative for now, but I'll say that we've reached or negotiated agreements with close to 50, or I have, not, I can only say we, but with about 50 different pipeline companies across the state of Pennsylvania. To give you an idea of the scope of what's going on out there, I've personally negotiated with approximately 50 companies, different companies across Pennsylvania, all across the state. So there is so much pipeline work going out. I have many files with Williams, Access Midstream, Regency, EOG, we could go on and on, EQT, on and on and on, Angelina, I could keep going and going and going. And, that's a big thing of what's going on out there today. And I can't say enough how important it is to understand your leverage, your ability to say no, and to maximize your circumstances. I can't say that enough. This isn't going to be a pipeline show, but I just want to tell people because, as I say often, whether it's me or somebody, please, if somebody comes to you with a pipeline right-of-way agreement, take a step back and figure out and understand your circumstance. Another thing, and I'm going to stay off my soapbox today, I think, but another thing, just be careful because I get clients who will come to me kind of, all right, I've done everything. I've negotiated everything. I want you to look this over and let me know how it looks. And I say, okay. And, I hate that situation because it's almost always the same result or the same circumstance. So the client comes in, maybe we have a telephone conference call. They send me all the documents. I look at everything and I say, a few things. One, I think your compensation rate may be low, and sometimes maybe it's substantially low. Sometimes it may be what you would expect it to be. But a concern is, if you have the ability and it's clear, and maybe I've dealt with a company and we've been able to obtain much higher compensation rates, and you provide me these documents and you're significantly lower than those, that can be a major hurdle to try to change that. Company says, landowner, you agreed to this. And, landowners sometimes feel obligated and say, I gave my word, but, just because you gave your word doesn't mean you don't have to do it because you didn't know all the facts. Well, first, you don't have to do it anyway. But when you don't know all the facts, that's a factor. But it certainly can make it, uncomfortable. Remember about people feeling guilty. And it's something that, as a person who wants to stand by my word, and I think that's very important for everybody. When you come into this and you say, okay, maybe I reached this agreement or we had this discussion that I was going to take, say, $25 per foot of this easement or right-of-way area, and I was going to allow you to lay multiple lines in the ground under this agreement. And then you come to me and say, this particular company will always pay you for a second line the same consideration again as the first, and you can limit them to 2 lines routinely. So by signing this, you're giving up double the money that you might be able to obtain. And so they say, I agreed to that, and I understand, but you agreed to something without knowing all those circumstances. And I'm not telling people, hey, back out of your word. But first off, let me just tell you this. It is the companies routinely back out of proposed agreements. And what do we mean? Look at their lease agreements. They all say, essentially, we can back out for any reason at any time prior to paying you. They routinely back out. Not just leases, but other matters as well. I've had 2 in the last 3 weeks where a company said, okay, they orally agree to a compensation figure. Then they come back and say, well, we decided on another route and we're going to go a different route. Sorry about that. Well, that doesn't do the landowner a lot of good when you went through this time and effort to discuss these items, and maybe you went through the expense as well. And the company says, well, you know what? Sorry, we don't need you. See you later. So they'll drop you in a heartbeat. And I don't care what they say, because when they're saying those things and they're being nice and, oh, we're good guys and all those other things, well, they're doing that because they want something from you and not just dropped you. But, a couple of weeks later, they can just drop you, and then they say, well, I'm sorry, and they blame it on somebody above or whatever the case may be. So please don't feel that you have to have this loyalty or these obligations, especially when you're not given all of the facts. And I'll give you another quick example. I've talked about this recently. I got to do everything I can to get the word out. Please tell your neighbors and friends if they're looking at roadway agreements that got a company. It's out there offering like $700, $680, $750 for a roadway. That's all. For a roadway that's going to be on your property. It's going to involve truck traffic for decades. Okay, it's going to be obviously more intense at times and less intense, but for decades. And say they're offering you, we'll be generous and say $750. Well, they're not telling you that property, if you're in Clean and Green, will be taken out of Clean and Green. So let's say it's a half an acre. Be kind. A half an acre. Well, you're now going to have a yearly tax increase on that half an acre. Now, you better be darn well sure that you also include the rollback language, meaning that if you're in Clean and Green, the company has 7 years, the state or county will go back 7 years, and you will be assessed taxes at a rate which would be whatever the rate they would use for not being in the Clean and Green versus your discounted rate by being in the Clean and Green. And what I mean by that is this. Let me explain that. Some companies will say, okay, we've removed your property out of the Clean and Green. If it has been in Clean and Green for more than 7 years, you receive a notice and a letter saying, okay, you owe back taxes for the portion of your property removed from Clean and Green for 7 years. Now, it's up to 7 years. So if you are only in Clean and Green for 3 years and you get pulled out, well, you only have to pay 3 years. But let's go ahead and we'll say that if it's in 7 years or more, then you have to pay back taxes for those 7 years. Plus, there's a 6% penalty. So that can be, the substantial bill, depending upon how many acres are involved. Okay, so that comes out, and then in the future, we'll use this half-acre example, and this is very small here. So we're going to use the half-acre example. We're going to be nice to the company. So a half-acre yours comes out. Well, you better make sure, again, that your back taxes and penalties are covered, because that's going to be a lump sum 7 years of a tax bill coming at once for that half-acre. Then, moving forward, that half-acre will stay out of Clean and Green. What does that mean? Well, say you had 20 acres. That 19 and a half acres is going to be taxed in your Clean and Green rate, but the other half acre will now be taxed at one of two ways, either what they call a fair market value or a commercial rate. And because this has a commercial purpose, we're seeing a very strong trend, and many counties, are already doing this, where they're charging a commercial rate. And that commercial rate, and we've been communicating with all the tax assessor's office, not all, but a bunch of them across the state, trying to get to the bottom of this issue to make sure that we can get this information out there. Because this is what people have to know this. And the companies are not telling people this. Not at all. So this guy who's your buddy, who's trying to put this roadway in your property, well, he's putting his roadway and putting his arm around you, but he's not telling you in your ear, hey, by the way, this is going to come out of Clean and Green. You're going to have a 7-year assessment of back taxes and penalties. And then also you're going to pay a heightened tax rate for the whole time this road is here. So the next 20, 30, 40, 50, or even 100 years, you're going to pay taxes on this. But we're giving you $750. So finishing this out, what a big concern is I said, you're going to get taxed on this half acre, in my example, at a heightened tax rate. And some companies use what is called a fair market value rate, and others are using a commercial rate. And as you may expect, the fair market value rate is much lower. The commercial rate that we're seeing being used from various counties already and I strongly suspect you're going to see others follow, is either $1,000 per acre or $1,500 per acre. That's what we're seeing now. So let's not give the gas company such a break here. We'll say that the roadway is in a county that's using a commercial rate at $1,500. Okay, so you have a half acre. Well, how much is one half of $1,500? $750. What was the company offering? $750. Now, when you get that $750, you're going to have to pay taxes on that. So you don't net $750. So what do we have now? If you don't have in there that you're going to get clean and green rollback taxes paid and penalties paid, immediately you're down 750 times 7, so we'll say 7 years in back taxes, so we'll just say 7 times 7, 49. So what do you got there? $4,900 plus dollars in taxes that you would have in penalties, plus penalties, and I rounded down here for easy math. So you got over $5,000 instantly that you're going to owe whenever you get that notice from the assessors. Then, moving forward, you're going to have, since it's a half acre and you're in an area where the county assessors are taxing you at $1,500 per acre, you're going to have a tax bill yearly now. Instead of having instead of having the clean and green rate that you were in, that roadway area is taken out, placed in a commercial class category for taxes, and so that half acre is now taxed at $750. So every single year it's going to be $750. So 10 years you've just paid $7,500. So play that out over time, you're paying a bunch of money. Well, what are you getting out of that? Well, you get a roadway on your property, and very rarely is that going to be something that you're going to be excited about. If you have a roadway or a road there and you want to improve it, that's one thing. But remember, what is going to be involved in this roadway? Truck traffic, nuisance, noise, construction, all of these different items are going to be involved in the construction of this roadway. Plus, some of these roadways are splitting people's property. Very ugly items. They're going to create dust. And we've had people that had to get their houses professionally cleaned because of all the dust and the truck traffic. So again, you got to be thinking these things. And the company guys that are all our buddies and they're all great, look, it's nothing against them personally, but you need and people need to understand that, they have a job to do. They have a job to do. What is their job? To get you to sign. They are not, and it kills me if they ever say it, you should immediately run, but they are not landowner advocates. They are company representatives, not your representative, company representative. So just think about this. Either one of two things are going on. Either this gentleman or lady who's telling you that we're going to give you $750 for this roadway that's going to go across your property, and we're not mentioning clean and green, one of two things. Either they don't know, and that's a problem. If they're out there talking to people about these items and preaching how good this is or why you should sign this, either they don't know about this or they're just misleading on purpose and not telling you in order to get you to sign a document that's going to come back to haunt you. And then later on, they're going to say, well, you signed the agreement. You signed the agreement, so you got to live by the agreement. But if there's an agreement they have and they don't like and they want you to come amend it or modify it, maybe give them some more workspace for a right-of-way, maybe they don't have the right for a roadway and they want you to agree to allow a roadway. Well, you're a bad guy if you don't want to do it. They change things on you all the time and put you in a position where you have no idea or no alternative but to agree. But then you should feel guilty, or you're being greedy, or you're going to stop production. That's garbage. You're going to stop royalties from your neighbors. Again, that's garbage. Remember, every royalty that every individual makes, the company's making the other side of it. So if you have 15%, they have 85%. You have 20%, they got 80%. they're making a lot of money too, and they're going to find a way. And, landowners are getting tricked and bullied and misled all the time, and we got to make sure that we're thinking about these things. Okay, here I go. I don't think I was quite on my soapbox, but I got to talk about that because I'm seeing it so much. And I don't know how these guys sleep at night when they go out to people and they make the argument, well, this is what other people signed. This is what other people signed. Other people were doing it. Other attorneys have looked at this. Well, you know what? If other attorneys looked at it and they approved of it, shame on them because they really don't know what they're doing. And shame, shame, shame on them because they don't know and they shouldn't be doing things that they don't know about. So if that's going on, that's no good argument. Well, these other guys had somebody that had no idea what they were doing and they did it, so therefore you should do it too. That's ludicrous. Also, because you got a lot of people out there, and that's fine, we're just going to sign, put it in front of me, sign. Where's the money? Where's my money? You have those people, just because those people do it that way, and that's fine if that's how they want to do it, doesn't mean that you have to. So the argument that other people have done something is one of the weakest, senseless arguments that are out there. All right. I'm off my soapbox. I am Attorney Doug Clark. I went way over, but I really wanted to keep rolling on that subject. You're listening to All Things Marcellus. I'm going to be back after this break. I'm going to talk about today, again, because we have to, offers to buy gas rights. I'm going to show you, and I'm going to read from an agreement of sale that it's a terrible, terrible document, and everybody needs to understand it. And again, spread the word. People need to know these things. I am Attorney Doug Clark. We'll be right back after this break. You're listening to All Things Marcellus. Welcome back to All Things Marcellus with me, Attorney Doug Clark of the Clark Law Firm. And again, I'm here every Sunday from 8 to 9 a.m. on these stations to give you valuable information, what I think to be valuable information to landowners regarding the natural gas development here in Pennsylvania. I started off, I kind of have a script, I'll be honest. I have this little script the way I start, and I've found over the years and for whatever reason over the last 6 months or so, I really start dropping off on the script here and jumping back some. Just, again, I think it's important that you know who I am, what do I do. I represent landowners, only landowners, and do gas lease negotiations. Hundreds and hundreds, and continue to do them across the state. Eastern part of the state, southwestern part of the state, all along the border in the Ohio, Armstrong County, my home county. It's been kind of fun because I've been getting several clients from Armstrong County recently, and it's funny because for me, I do have this, and it's come off some, but I have my Armstrong County accent, so it's always neat when I talk to somebody out there because I've lost it some, but I still have it. But I hear people talk, and it's just like, it's like sitting in my parents' kitchen dinner table, so it's pretty funny. So so I represent clients all across the state, represent clients who have Pennsylvania property or gas rights in Pennsylvania, regardless of where they're located. And all I do is oil and gas related issues. That's it. We're very blessed and we're very fortunate. We're very busy. We have a lot of clients, which is wonderful. And it's also a great resource, because of the client base and because, we do a lot of, we talk to people a lot. We get, people call, maybe there's nothing we can do to help them, but they tell us their stories. So you get a nice perspective, and we're always learning, with anything. You got to be, able to learn, develop, and evolve. And that's one of the great things about what we do. It's really neat because, I hear a lot of different stories and have dealt with people, at all different phases. Just touching, I talked about some pipeline agreements. I've dealt with people who've just signed them as soon as they're presented, and then they come back later and they have all these problems, and they say, hey, can you help me? So we go through that history, and we see firsthand the type of problems that occur when somebody just signs whatever that agreement is that was put in front of them. So then not only do we see that, we look at that to try to help other people and use those as examples of things you need to watch out for. And then obviously work to try to help that particular landowner if at all possible. But seeing problems is one of the things where, when you see something for the first time, you obviously don't have the experience as to, well, what happens after this. But say you have a contract that's put in front of you and you haven't seen this. And you say, okay, I signed this and everything looks good. But over the last 10 years, a bunch of people have signed these same types of contracts and have found certain problems that arise, and some of them commonly. So what would you want to do now when you have that agreement? Well, you want to feed off of that base of information that's out there now. And there's a lot of information. I was talking to a gentleman last night, actually from Armstrong County. We were talking about pipelines, and a lot of activity was going on this gentleman's property. I said, it's a shame out in western Pennsylvania that there's not somebody out there really working hard to educate the people, because the gas isn't less valuable out there, and a lot of times it's more valuable because it's wet gas. So what we still have is we have the mentality, and my parents are completely in it, and my grandparents, if they were alive, I'm sure would be as well. You have this mentality of the way the gas industry was for years, and it wasn't really a big money industry. It was just that, hey, we want to get free gas to our house situation. So, the right-of-ways were small. They were small pipelines. They weren't major projects. But now things have changed, and these are big money lines. These are big money wells. But the mentality, and the companies have done an outstanding job, they have, of keeping this mentality of the landowners and feeding off of it and taking advantage of it, where landowners are signing very bad agreements, especially pipelines, but we see it in leases as well. But in pipelines, they're just signing bad agreements, and the problem is that people just they're not informed about this. It's not that they're not smart people; they're just not being told what they need to be watching out for. And because it's kind of like on a roll in the opposite direction of what we see in the Northeast. It's a roll being ROLL, where the company is rolling by getting people to sign these bad agreements. And once you get that momentum going, and you go to a house, well, Mr. Smith, the big farmer over here, signed it. So and so signed it. This guy signed it. Oh yeah, this guy signed it. He had a lawyer look at it. It's all good. They signed it. So these guys said, well, okay, I guess if everybody else is doing it, I hate to say it because I hated it when I was a little kid, but the old mother, well, if everybody jumped off the bridge, would you jump too? Well, that's the mentality though. You sit there and say, well, just because everybody else is doing something, does that mean I shouldn't take advantage and take a step back and look at it? And I can't tell you how many times companies say, well, this is all we do. This is all we do. And then by the time we're done, they've done something totally different. And of course they're going to say that. And their positions, they tend not to move your direction until you really push them. So their immediate position is, nope, you're crazy, you're nuts, we'll never do that, we never do that. And then by the end of the process, if your leverage is right, maybe you got double compensation, maybe way more than that. Maybe you got a lot better agreement, the terms of the agreement. Talk about compensation, but the terms of the agreement are so important as well. So, I got drawers full of clients that from the beginning, the company said, we won't do this, we won't do that, you're nuts. And it's changed drastically. But you have to understand the circumstances. You have to understand, are you in a position that you can maximize this leverage? And you really need to understand your leverage. Another thing, I'll say is I'm a big believer, and I'm going to stay on pipelines, I guess, for another couple moments. But, rarely is there truly a hurry. We got to get this signed, we got to get this signed, we got to get this signed. Remember, if there's truly a hurry and they're going to do this production or they're going to start installing the pipeline, then they shouldn't have to have a 2, 3, 4, 5-year option in the agreement before they even decide whether or not they pay you again. If it's so important, it's such a hurry, why do you need 3 years to decide? Permitting. Listen, we do agreements, and quite often they're straight right-of-way agreements because the landowner didn't rush in anything. And as a general rule, who does the best? Well, the people who wait the longest generally do the best. However, what's the worst that can happen? They go somewhere else. Well, if you're in a gas area, especially, you're sitting here in this gas area and you have acres and you're going to get royalties. If it is me, and I probably do more pipelines than any attorney in the whole state. If it's me, I would say, thanks, but no thanks. I'm not interested. Why do I want to have a pipeline? What if I say I'm going to get $25,000? Maybe I get $50,000, but maybe that's going to be a drop in the bucket compared to the royalties I'm going to get. So what would I rather have in 5 years from now? And we can use all kinds of numbers, but would I rather have $250,000 in the bank from royalties and have no pipeline right away on my property and never have gone through that process? Or would I rather have $290,000 and a pipeline going through my property? I mean, that's something that's an individual decision. But that's a big example. I mean, say you had $250 in royalties and it was a $10,000 pipeline right away. Why in the world would you do it? I don't know that. Why would you do it? When you have a pipeline, what can they offer you? They're offering you the money. They're going to promise you royalties. Well, the royalties are going to come. However it happens, they're going to come. They're going to come because somebody else agreed to a pipeline, or they're going to come because the company is going to pay you more to justify this pipeline. That's how it's going to go. Anything else is garbage. That is how it will go. The pipeline company is hired by the gas company to put the pipe in the ground. The pipeline company has to get it done. They have to get it done. So you have a choice. If you can say no if you want to say no, or say yes when the price is high enough. I talk about this so much because it's just such a big issue that's going on now. And I love when I get a client who is getting royalties, and maybe they're getting $20,000 a month in royalties, or $10,000, getting these big royalty checks, or sometimes more. And then the company comes in and they want to put a $30,000 or $40,000, $50,000 pipeline on their property. Why would you agree to that? Why would you agree to devalue the property when you're in this outstanding situation of this royalty income? And a lot of times, those royalties are being generated from only one well. And maybe there's planned to be 6 or more wells. So why do that if you don't have to? Or get a better agreement. Or, even if you're okay with the compensation, you can do a lot with the terms of the agreement. How many pipelines, the size, the location, when's it going to terminate? How are they going to reclaim it? Think about this. When you agree to a pipeline, what does that mean? Well, number one, usually it means you don't even know if they're going to put it in or not. And let's say they do. Well, now they come out, there's heavy equipment, machinery on the property. Let's assume everything goes perfectly. Well, you're going to have this equipment, and God forbid if there's an accident, but they're going to be on there, they're going to put the pipe in the ground, they're going to cover it up. Well, maybe they get this thing done in December, November, and they say, well, we can't actually plant, so we got to leave this thing uncovered, or we can't cover it up with the topsoil and plant it this time. So now you got this muddy mess. So let's hope they get in there and they do it right in the spring. Well, let's also, like I said, hopefully nobody ever gets hurt, nobody comes on the property, you don't have any problem with trespassers or anything like that. And so now here we come in the spring, and they're going to replant it and reseed it. Well, what if they don't do a great job? What if the contours aren't the same? And we get those complaints. What if it is all rutty and you have problems because there's ruts and you can't, it's just not the same? What if there's big rocks there? What if they leave they're allowed to leave the stumps and there's a big pile of stumps? I mean, I've seen these piles of stumps that are 15, 20 feet high. It's amazing. So they leave all this stuff there, and so now you're sitting there and you got this muddy mess for who knows how long, and sometimes it's not planted correctly. Sometimes you get reports there's a bunch of weeds, all these other things. So these are just some things that can potentially go wrong. I've had clients tell me, it wasn't reclaimed properly for 3 years. It was muddy, it was a mess, they left it uncovered, all kinds of problems. So I'm not saying you're always going to have those problems, but that's something you're exposing yourself to. So then think back, maybe it goes perfect, but maybe it doesn't. Is there a cost in this negotiation process that says to you, well, all right, just in case something goes bad, I'd like to ask for some more compensation. It's kind of like insurance. If something goes bad, at least I can justify it because I got this amount of money. Or in the worst case scenario, and heaven forbid this would happen, but maybe you ask for some more money because if they screw it up, at least you say, well, if I have to pay somebody to do it or if I have to do it myself, this money can help to cover those expenses. So you got to be thinking about those things. The landman's number one tool, the best, sharpest, strongest arrow in their quiver is, well, this will help you. We can get you royalties. Again, that'll come, and they can get you royalties, and you can get royalties, but it doesn't have to be a bad agreement. It does not have to be a bad agreement, and people are signing very, very bad agreements. All right. I promise I'm going to come up here. We're going to go into the next segment. I'm going to talk about selling the gas rights. It's something I've done several shows about, but I want to pick out some language. I had a client consult this week, and we were working on something, and my first thing always is, all right, let's explore the negatives of what you're considering doing. And then if you want to do it and you understand everything, well then, let's go. Let's make sure we help you and do it the right way. So it's kind of like that first session is kind of like this trying to not necessarily talk somebody out of something. Well, in some cases it is, I guess, trying to talk them out or to make sure they're thinking about the negatives. The positives are easy. The landman says, hey, we're going to get you gas. What does the guy who wants to buy your gas rights say? Oh, hey, we can give you $100,000 today, $200,000 today. We'll give you this money today. Well, I'm going to talk. They don't give it to you today. There's no guarantee you even get it. And if they're going to offer you this money today, what do they think is going to happen in the future? Okay, I'll be right back. You're listening to All Things Marcellus with me, Attorney Doug Clark. We're here every Sunday from 8 to 9 a.m., and I'll be right back after this break. Welcome back to All Things Marcellus with me, Attorney Doug Clark of the Clark Law Firm. We are here, I am here, every Sunday from 8 to 9 a.m. on these stations. Also, you can go back to the websites. Maybe this is the first time catching the show, or you just, we recently switched to these stations, so you may go back, or it's the first time we just started listening to the show. You can go check us out. There's a lot of other ways to get the show. And actually, I think about 3 or 4 days away, but we're about at an August or 4-year anniversary. In August of 2010, I started doing the radio show, and I think it was around the 20-something, around the 20th, 20-something. So been doing the show now for just about 4 years. Weekly show. Just gives you an idea how much there is out there and what we need to talk about and what you need to be thinking about. And this has evolved quite a bit. Started talking so much about leases and pew clauses and shut-ins and things like that. And now we're involved to these negotiations on leverage and pipelines and estate planning and issues on the ground. Are you having a problem? And unfortunately, royalty issues and deductions, and are you being paid properly? I mean, there's just so many things going on. It's going to continue to evolve. So, we're going to be staying on top of this. We're going to make sure that we're getting information out to you. I say, look, call me anytime. You need help. You need representation. You want a review of your lease and royalty check to know if I believe a company is taking deductions that we don't believe are proper. You can contact me anytime. 570-307-0702, anywhere across Pennsylvania. 570, or the country, or even out of the country, if you have property or gas rights in Pennsylvania. Call me, 570-307-0702, but you can go back and talk about the radio show for 4 years. Go check out pagasleaseattorney.com. Check it out, pagasleaseattorney.com. Check out pipelineattorney.com. Whether you ever call me or not, check out those websites. A lot of great, very valuable information for you as a landowner, gas rights owner, things to think about. And also, we have the radio shows archived, so they're available through the website. So you can go check them out there. Probably 160 some hours of radio shows at this point. So we index them, working on catching up. I think we're about close here, but we index them so you can zero in on, hey, what's the topic? What are you interested in? Is it gas leasing? Is it selling the gas rights, pipelines? Damage releases, well site agreements, you name it. We've done a show on it. I've done a show on it. So you want to check that out. Again, pagasleaseattorney.com. And also, we now started putting up the shows on YouTube. So, can't get much easier. Go to YouTube, type in All Things Marcellus. You can check out the shows there. And we usually have those up every Monday morning. First thing that Katie does when she comes into the office, we put up the radio shows on YouTube. So you can go check them out there as well. And then you say, well, I'm always a guy who's on iTunes. How do I, too bad you aren't on iTunes. Well, we're on iTunes as well. So you can go to iTunes, check out the podcast section. You can type in All Things Marcellus there, and you can get on, check it out for free on iTunes. You can listen to it anytime as well. So a lot of ways to get access to it. We're very thankful. We get a lot of compliments and greatly appreciate those. We want to make sure that we're getting information, and whether you need representation, you want to contact me or somebody else, that's okay too. Get representation, get assistance for what you need to have assistance on. And a lot of people are afraid to say, well, geez, I'm afraid it's going to be very expensive. But, you have something, if you don't really need a lot of help with, then it's not going to be very expensive at all. And sometimes it's not going to be anything. But if it's something, usually if there is something that requires more time and more expense, well, there's a reason why. And that's because it was a serious situation. And in almost all cases, if they are more involved, it's going to result in, through this process, increased compensation. So in most cases, and I can't say, every single case ever, but in most cases, the compensation rate will increase, most cases, significantly more than whatever the bill is, your legal fees. In some cases where there isn't an increase, there's an increase in the terms or the quality of the agreement. And if I ever feel, myself personally, I can't speak for others, but if I ever feel that there's a situation where I can't help the person, it's the first thing I'm going to tell them. I do not want to have anybody disappointed and say, well, why did I contact Doug Clark? Why did I contact him? Look what happened. I have a legal bill and I got no results. I want to avoid that in every possible way. And we try, and it's very, very rare that occurs. And then we look to work with clients in whatever way we can. So, that's important. Don't be afraid to reach out to get some information. And again, if it's not me, make sure it's somebody, and somebody with experience understands what they're doing. I am Attorney Doug Clark. You're listening to All Things Marcellus. We are here. Why do I always do that? I am here. There's no we here. I am here every Sunday from 8 to 9 a.m. Okay. I'm going to talk about the selling of gas rights, and I've talked about this before. I'm going to be quick on the intro. What happens is, and many, many people know, we get these letters people send to us all the time saying, hey, got this letter in the mail. This company wants to buy my gas rights. This company wants to buy my gas rights. I keep getting all these letters in the mail. Well, early on, we had a bunch of people get these get the letters, and what happened was a lot of these people were mad. They signed a $25, their neighbors signed a $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 per acre bonus, and so they said, I really got screwed over on this deal. So what am I going to do? I'm getting this letter in the mail saying, hey, this company wants to give me $1,000 to buy my gas rights. Well, that's a lot better. I have 100 acres. That's $100,000. So, I think I want to do that because I really got kind of screwed over, or got the shaft, if you will, on the leasing. So I think this is a good move for me. Well, then it turns out that over time, maybe it's not a good move, and there's a lot of royalties produced, and it's just ends up being a very bad deal. Well, that was kind of like this little window of opportunity where these companies would target people, in my opinion, who signed bad gas leases. And so it was kind of, ironically, a second chance to take advantage of them because they were upset that they didn't get a great lease, or at least a great bonus and the great royalty percentage. So they say, well, hey, these guys are frustrated. Let's try to throw some money at them, and maybe we can pick up this lease and these gas rights at a low value. And that's what they did. And many people, unfortunately, signed that. Now, that's continued over time, but now we have this other kind of new window of opportunity. We're seeing this being taken advantage of now as well, where now landowners sitting out there, I signed this gas lease and I thought I'd be getting royalties by now, and it's taking a long time, and maybe the company has drilled a well, but there are no royalties, and that's a great opportunity for these companies. Again, this isn't the only place they're doing this. They learn. We talked earlier about learning from experiences. They learned. They know how to do this. They've been doing it across the country for years. So, people out here, they didn't have this experience. This is new to people. So what do? They say, well, geez, all right, let's look and see where companies are drilling. Let's see where they're forming units. And a lot of times they have very close relationships from what we've seen. I shouldn't. Well, let's just say I believe in many examples they have pretty strong access to information. Let's say that access to information as to what's going on. But also they do their homework. They're doing research. I mean, I've talked to these guys. They have maps. They really know what the heck is going on. And I say maps, detailed maps, drilling maps, what's going on, ideas about geology. So they're targeting areas. And if you have a lot of money in an offer, well, that means they believe that's a really darn good area. So think about that. So anyway, so here you are, you get this letter and you're saying, yeah, boy, I'm really frustrated. I haven't seen any royalties. I'm not hearing good things. And you know what? I get this letter and they want to buy my gas rights for like $6,000 an acre, maybe even $7,000 an acre to buy it. So that sounds like a pretty good deal for me. You know, that sounds like a good deal. I get that money right away. That sounds great. Let's say you have 100 acres. Well, you know, $7,000 an acre, that's $700,000. That's a lot of money. And who would blame anyone for thinking about it? But if a person wants to give you $700,000 at once, well, why would they ever want to do that? Obviously, they're intelligent people and they want to make sure, they believe that they're going to reap substantial benefits from this. And I mean substantial benefits is what they believe in my experience. So what happens then? You say, okay, well, you know what? I'm considering this. So they get a nibble. It's like a fishing thing. They catch a nibble. Oh, this person's interested. They're nibbling on this. So then they throw out some bait. Well, maybe we can give you some more money. And then they throw out what they call an agreement. It's called a sales agreement or agreement for sale. And they say, here, you know, sign this. And often, and it's just so funny, like the companies love to say, well, this is our standard agreement, our form agreement, meaning this is what we use all the time. Well, that's what they use all the time for people who just sign stuff. You know, that's their standard agreement, but you can change it typically and hopefully. But you need to understand, just because something, if a company's giving you their standard agreement, well, it's their standard agreement because they like it. They don't give you the standard landowner agreement. They give you their standard agreement. So talk to this gentleman, says, hey, you know, I'm thinking about this, and say, okay, wait, let's step back. You know, why are you thinking about it, and get into this? So what happened in this case is the offer occurred before the first royalty checks came, like I said. So the landowner also doesn't know what this money, you know, what these royalties are going to be. So says, man, I like the sound of this offer. Haven't got the royalties. This sounds good. And now in the meantime, the royalty checks start coming. And I always love that because, you know, usually landowners see, whoa, thank heavens I didn't move forward with this potential sale of my gas rights. Now, sometimes maybe the royalty checks are low, but let's talk about this particular case. So the gentleman starts getting royalties. Now, I'm going to not be 100% specific, so we're not getting too close to identifying anything. But landowners getting royalties, and the purchase price for what they wanted to buy, for the company to buy the gas rights, was really close to, well, we'll say $100,000. So landowner starts getting royalties. Well, the first royalty check is for several months, you know, dating back to last year, and that's the first royalty check. Well, had the person signed the agreement, then he wouldn't have known what the royalties were going to be. But his first check was around $40,000. So he was going to potentially sell a portion of his gas rights, a large portion, and for $100,000. But his first royalty check was $40,000. And actually, he has more checks coming from other companies. Then, after the first check, he had a couple more checks. And they're averaging several $1,000s per month. Also, there's only one well producing, only one, and there's 6 planned for this unit. So, in the course of, you know, a few months of getting checks, all of a sudden, this person has close to $50,000 in royalties paid, plus he still hasn't got checks from one of the other companies. It has a fairly significant portion of the lease. So that's going to be, you know, tens of thousands of dollars more. At least we'll say at least $10,000 more. So all of a sudden this money's coming in, and this individual's like, wow, boy, I'm glad I have this information. Now, it gets worse. So you got to, no, it was good for the story here because he hasn't done it. But he was thinking about doing it. And then we also talked about the agreement. You know, what were you signing? What is in this sales agreement? When we get back, I'm going to talk about that. please pay attention. This also, if you're not even considering selling your gas rights, this at least gives you an idea of like the way people are trying to take advantage of circumstances. So the importance of needing to understand any document that you see, that you need to understand it. And if you're going to do anything major in a transaction or sign anything, you need to make sure that you have good representation. I'm going to explain what I mean by that. We'll be right back. You're listening to All Things Marcellus with me, Attorney Doug Clark, here every Sunday from 8 to 9 a.m. I'll be right back after this break. Welcome back to All Things Marcellus with me, Attorney Doug Clark of the Clark Law Firm. Again, I'm here every Sunday, 8 to 9 a.m. to give you valuable information you need regarding gas development here in Pennsylvania. I want to jump right into it because I have a short last segment. Okay, talking about selling gas rights to these companies that are soliciting you to sell them your gas rights. Okay, so the sales agreement. I gave you this example. The gentleman was offered about $100,000, and since the time of this offer, he started getting royalty payments, and they're totaling about $60,000 at this point, or $50,000, excuse me. And there's going to be more coming even from another company that's behind in sending the checks. So right there in and of itself, thank heavens he didn't do anything, and he got this information. He got his checks, and he was able to make a better decision for himself. Now, on the flip side, the sales agreement, and this is very, very interesting. Say he were to sign this agreement today and say, okay, I'm going to go ahead and move forward. Well, the sales agreement sets the terms of what's going to be involved in this sale. Okay, what are we selling? It's the contract of what you're selling, what the buyer is buying. And you need to be careful because it's a contract. So if you're signing a sales agreement without representation, you're doing something wrong. You shouldn't be doing this. Here's an example. And this gentleman, the company guy never explained. He's talked to him. Oh, he's a nice guy. He's a nice guy. But he's not explaining. He's not your advocate. He's trying to get a good deal and buy your gas rights because he believes that, usually he's going to make a commission and the people he's working for are going to make a lot of money. So in this case, one of the terms was that the oil and gas interests that are to be conveyed by the landowner is by what's called a general warranty deed, meaning that you're warranting that you own all these gas rights, which usually you can get rid of. But saying, okay, we're going to convey the gas rights. Well, when? As of the date I sign this, well, check this out. Effective as of the earlier of the date of first production or the date of the agreement. Again, so when are you transferring? When does this take effect? It takes effect as of the date of production or the date you sign the agreement, but it's the earlier of those two. The earlier of those two. So if this gentleman were to sign this agreement today, the gas rights that he was conveying when this agreement is ultimately done, this agreement is going to take effect as of the date of first production. So if he's got $50,000, he's going to have to give, if he's selling, if he's selling all of them, he's going to have to give back to the company, this company buying the rights, that $50,000. He doesn't get to keep that. If he's selling, half the rights, well, he has to give the company $25,000. And that's going to keep going forward. So if he was thinking, I'm going to sell these gas rights for $100,000 and, I've already got $50,000, so I'm feeling pretty good, which doesn't make a lot of sense. But if you felt that way, he needs to know that when he sells those rights, he's going to not only sell the rights, but he's going to have to pay them whatever that royalty is that he receives. So we'll use an example. He was selling 50% of the rights, he has to give him half the money he's received from the beginning, the date of first production. And that's going to constantly be adding up. He's going to continue to be receiving these royalty checks. Although if he signed the sales agreement, he's going to have to look back and pay the company back these royalties. The company's buying his gas rights. It says that you're conveying these gas rights the effect of the earlier of either the date of first production or the date of the agreement. So they're going to reach back into your pocket and take your money because that's what you agreed to. Again, you agreed to this. If you agree to it, that's what you agreed to. Please, I hope you know what you're agreeing to. Please see that. And I said to the gentleman, I said, I want to make sure you're aware of this. And he wasn't aware of this. And I said, well, did the guys ever mention this to you? Did the guys who you were trying to get you to purchase, or they were trying to purchase your rights, did they ever mention this to you? Did they ever read or tell you what this meant? Well, the answer to that is of course not. No, because the person you're talking to, who's a nice guy, what is he? He's a broker. He's a broker, which again isn't necessarily bad, but that's what he is. How is he going to get paid? Most likely on a commission. A commission. How is he going to treat the person who he's trying to earn a commission from a transaction? Very, very well, I would think. Very, very well. Also, this person does this for a living. So they understand how to manipulate people, manipulate documents to make sure that they're making the best presentation. Again, not illegal. What's important is that you understand, and if this is your first experience, to make sure you have somebody working for you that understands what's going on and can guide you through this. So what an unbelievably big mistake it would have been if the person signed the sales agreement and didn't realize that they were going to have to give this company their royalties since the date of first production. If they sold 100%, they'd have to give all that money. If they sold 50%, half the money they received, they're going to have to give back to the company or give to the company that's buying the royalty rights or gas rights. Very, very important. Another thing, touching on quickly, if you're thinking about doing this, you have to have an attorney who understands, because another thing that people don't think about, you may have a mortgage on the property, and your mortgage agreement with the bank or the mortgage company, whoever's holding your mortgage, there's a darn good chance that there's documentation there that says that you can't do this. Or that if you do this, it could be a violation of the mortgage. It could accelerate the mortgage. There's a lot of things that could occur. You need to understand your mortgage document, because if you have a mortgage in your property, you mortgage, say, to the bank. Well, that you mortgage your whole property to the bank, not just the surface rights. You mortgage the surface and everything underneath it. You mortgaged everything in what's called fee simple, meaning everything. Fancy fee simple, aka everything. So the bank may not take too kindly to you selling gas rights to another company when they hold the mortgage in those rights. And you're going to find most likely that in almost all mortgage documents, this could be a problem for you. So you need to understand that, and you need to explore that. The other thing is, the company who's buying the rights, usually in all these agreements, they have the ability to just put that money right to the mortgage and not pay you. You know, we've seen this and we've had to address this. You need to be aware of this. You can't be surprised. Think about these two things so far. What a surprise would it be if you had to go and give the company all the royalties that you received from the date of first production, because that was in your agreement and you didn't realize that. And then what happens if the money you were supposed to get, they pay to your mortgage? Or the bank knocks on your door, sends you a letter, says, hey, you sold rights and we didn't authorize it, and you weren't allowed to do that under your mortgage agreement with us. Those are enormous problems that you need to be aware of. Now, last thing, these companies they want to put in every possible way for them to get out and no possible way for you to get out. Of course, makes sense. Again, they're smart. They're doing things from your side. If you try to protect yourself, you're not doing anything bad and you shouldn't feel guilty. You need to understand these things because they sure understand them. So they write themselves every possible way in the world to get out. Well, we don't like title. We don't like this. We don't like that. We get out. But they want to lock you in on the sales agreement that when you sign this, well, you're obligated. If this deal goes through and they accept it, you have to pay them back the royalties from the date of first production. Well, how quickly does this happen? Well, these agreements have things like this, that closing has to be held within 60 days from the date of this. However, if we, the company is going to buy the property, want to do survey work, we can extend this deadline in order to get our survey work done. And this one even says that you can do it, that the closing occurs not more than 30 days following the completion of their work. So then if they do this work or they come up with other reasons they don't like it, well, they just don't do the deal. Well, what's happening in the meantime? What if this takes 6 months or more? There's no time frame limitation there. Well, the company can sit there and watch. Are you getting paid royalties? How substantial are they? Okay, well, this is a really bad area. Nothing's happening. You know what? We're not crazy about this deal. We're not going to move forward. Or wow, those wells are slammer. That well's the slammer. This landowner is raking in royalties. Let's get this deal done. And then all of a sudden they say, oh, by the way, Mr. Landowner, your agreement of sale says that we bought these gas rights as of the date of first production. And now we have, say, 8 months of production. You owe us, if we bought 100% of the right, you owe us that money. And we might have like set back a little bit and watched what happened. And when we saw it was a good area, we pounced and took the deal. If it was really, really bad, would they have maybe tried to wiggle out of that? And is that something you want to expose yourself to? So those are three enormous problems that you have to understand. In my opinion, you just can't sign that agreement. Now, thankfully, we can negotiate that, get some things changed. But you have to understand that. You have to get the picture for you and what's right for you and your circumstance. And please, before you do any of these things, please make sure you're getting assistance, whether it's me or somebody else. I am Attorney Doug Clark. You're listening to All Things Marcellus. I will be back next Sunday from 8 to 9 a.m. Have a great week, everyone.